Hey you cool cats and kittens, this is JR and I'm here to do a quick overview of dimensions using my ID template in AutoCAD. Now what I've done is I've copied and pasted this building from another drawing directly into my ID template, and I now want to add dimensions to this upper left hand corner of the building. But before I do that, there's a few things that we need to do. First, you got to remember that when using my ID template, that you need to know what your viewport scale is first so that you can choose the correct dimension style that has the correct dimension text. So let's head over to Paperspace, and I'm just going to go to 11 by 17 for this demonstration. And you'll see that I have my title block. It needs to be updated, as does the drawing title. But what I have is I have that left-hand corner of the building zoomed in on in my viewport, and if I click on the viewport, you'll see that I have it scaled at 1/4 inch equals 1 foot, and I have that locked. So just as a reminder, I'm just going to unlock this real quick. If you need to scale your viewport, all you do is click on it, come down here, and then find which scale that you want it to be. Now I just had to play around a little bit to find out what scale I wanted it to be at, and I felt like this was a great scale to really highlight this area that I'm concentrating on. So I chose 1/4 inch. You guys can choose whatever scale that you feel best describes visually the areas that you want to concentrate on for your project. It could be the whole building, it could be a snapshot, but this is just a demonstration, so just kind of keep that in mind. So I'm going to go ahead and click 1/4 inch, and I'm going to go ahead and lock it. That way I don't accidentally move it out of scale. Now that I know what the scale of the viewport is, I can go back to model space. And I'm going to zoom in on that area that I'm interested in dimensioning. So something like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and choose the dimension style that I want to work with. So I'm going to go to the Annotate tab up in the ribbon, and I'm going to find the Dimensions panel. And I'm going to come here and I'm going to choose 1/4. So remember, my viewport was scaled at 1/4 inch equals 1 foot. So therefore I'm going to choose 1/4 to match that scaling. So 1/4, and you see how it highlights it up here in the ribbon. The next step is to choose the correct layer. So for the ID template, I'm going to go to the Home tab, and I'm going to come over here to the Layers panel and use this little scroll bar to find the correct layer, which is called ADIM. ADIM is a cyan color, and it gives a medium weight line when you print with the DDFD plot style. So I know you all remember the DDFD, dog, dog, frog, dog is kind of what I always made fun of it with, but that plot style might need to be installed into your AutoCAD, as it does not automatically come installed. So I will give the directions to whomever is teaching this class to help you be able to install it yourself. Just follow it step by step. The DDFD plot style is what takes the colors that you draw with here in model space, and it turns them into thin, medium, or heavy black line weights when printing. So remember that each color has a different line weight, and text is good to have a medium line weight, so that's why it's cyan. Now we're going to start by dimensioning the exterior, and there's generally 3 dimensions that you need to draw with. I call them the detail dimension, the mid dimension, and the overall dimension. But before I get into details, just remember that whomever is teaching this lesson has the final say as to how they want your dimensioning to look. There's no right way or wrong way. Each professional has their own style and their own way of doing things. So as a junior designer, you need to follow the rules of whomever is in charge. So professors, if you're using this video, feel free to pause the video at any time and demonstrate to students how you actually want their dimensions to look, should your look different than mine. Alright, so let's start dimensioning this bad boy, and we'll start with the detail dimensions. They are running dimensions that map out all the details running along like the side of a wall. They include any change of surface or object, be it wall to window to door or a bump out, that might occur on the building exterior wall. Any and every single change that occurs on that wall needs to be dimensioned. And detail dimensions sit closest to the object that you're dimensioning. So I'm going to start with those first. Now everyone has a different idea as to how far out the dimensions should come from your object that you're dimensioning, so be sure to check with your instructor as to how far out they actually want your dimensions to go. If your instructor says, for instance, that they should be placed a half an inch from the building, your instructor's not talking about placing it a half an inch while you're in model space. They're actually talking about how it pertains to paper space. So remember that paper space is what it's going to look like when it finally prints. Now you might need to come here to paper space to help you kind of measure out that half an inch if that's what they're kind of looking for. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, and I'm not inside the viewport. I haven't done anything. I'm going to go ahead and create a line, and I'm going to use this furthest point to draw a line that's 0.5 inches or half an inch. Hit escape. So this is where the instructor wants the line to go. It's a half an inch from the furthest wall I can on this side. Now this line was drawn in paper space. It's not going to show up in model space, but I do want to have a line show up in model space. So with my viewport, let me grab it again, set at 1/4 and locked. That's a very important step. Now I'm going to go ahead and double click inside, and you'll see that the viewport got really dark. That means you're now working in model space from paper space. That's so crazy, isn't it? Well, what I want to do is now draw a line to help me guide where this is going to be located. So I'm just going to grab a line, and the thing that you'll notice is that you can't really snap to that line that's sitting in paper space. So I'm going to kind of zoom in, and I'm going to do my best to get the center of my cursor aligned with the end of that line. And I'm just going to draw a quick line, hit escape, and I'm going to zoom back out. Now if you didn't lock your viewport, you might have a really hard time getting out of that view. So type PS, and you'll unactivate your view, and you're back in paper space, and you can zoom again. So just to kind of demonstrate, when I click on this line, it highlights. When I click on this line, it doesn't. And the reason why is because it's in model space, not paper space. And then when I go over to model space, you'll see that that little line has been drawn. So this is where all of my dimensions are going to align for the detailed dimension aspects of the exterior building. Excellent. Before I forget, I'm going to go back to paper space, and I'm going to get rid of this line. I don't even really need it. But that was a half an inch after it prints from there. So how far was that when we did it in model space? Let's just do a quick measurement just to show you. From here to here is 2 feet. So that just shows you how it's different drawing in paper space versus drawing in model space. In model space, we're using 1:1 scale. Everything you draw here is represented in real life. It is the same for paper space, but you just got to realize that the white area represents the 11 by 17 piece of paper that's going to print. Remember that we're zooming in on buildings so that we can get them all to fit on a piece of paper. So measurement is a little bit different in paper space versus model space. So now that I know that that's 2 feet apart, then that's how we know how far apart each dimension needs to be afterwards. All right, let's get started dimensioning this already. For crying out loud, shut up, Jessica, right? So you might be tempted to, as you're in the Home tab, to use this dimension, but I'm going to say don't use this one. Go to the Annotate tab and use this one. So 1/4 dimension, and all you have to do is come down here and click here and here. So that's the first change, is from the corner of the building to the window. If you click there and drag up, you'll see a couple things happen, and I'm going to snap it to this line up here. We have some break lines that are happening, so the extension lines of the dimension are not touching our drawing. That's super, super important when we go to print. We don't want to confuse anybody looking at our drawings as to what's a wall line and what's an extension line, because remember, these are all going to be black and white by the time we're done. The second thing is I extended it all the way up to that line that I drew earlier, because that's where I want all of my dimensions to be placed. So now that I have one done, I'm just going to go ahead and delete this, and I'm going to just base it all off of this dimension. We have tick marks that helps us differentiate where the dimensions are as we start lining them up. And we have our text that is centered into the dimensions. So again, I'm just going to grab the dimension and I'm going to click and click down on the model itself. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag my cursor and get it to align with that previous dimension. Beautiful. Keep going. It's a little bit tedious, but it works. Now, some people don't like to do the overall window. Instead, they like to dimension to the center of the window. There's no right or wrong way, it's just a different style. If your instructor wants you to dimension to the center of the window, just grab this grip mark and bring it up so that they all stay consistently the same size. So how I did that was I grabbed the dimension and then I grab this little grip mark and I found the midpoint of the window. If you can't find the midpoint, remember to come down to your O snaps and make sure that midpoint is checked. All right, so I'm just going to stick with the exterior to exterior window method instead of the center window method. I'm going to dimension. I don't think I got that one right. Let me try that again. Make sure that you're grabbing the right thing. There we go. That's a little better. I didn't think I had any half an inch kind of thing here. Now this window is really big. It does have some center mullions, and oh, I can see that I already got that off. What the heck did I do there? I don't know. Really watch what you're snapping to when you're snapping to your windows and stuff in your model. There we go. That looks a little better. So this window does have mullions, but it is wall to wall, one big window. So I'm not measuring, but you might have an instructor who wants you to measure some aspect of this window. So just kind of make sure that you're following what your instructor or your manager is wanting you to do. So this area, the extension line is touching the building and I don't want that. So make sure that you grab your dimension, click and drag this little guy up, and then you'll see that we have a nice break. You should always see a nice healthy dimension extension happening. A lot of times you don't want it too far, but you don't want it too short. But because we're trying to get a nice long running dimension, including this bump out, these are a little bit longer than they should, but this is a great example as to how far your extension line should go. So one more time, here we go. Oh my gosh, we're having so much fun in the sun with our AutoCAD. Woo! And I'm actually going to stop it right here because that's basically the end of what I'm really looking at dimensioning. So there's a nice long run of detailed dimensions, all aligned and 1/2 inch away. So when we go to do the vertical aspects, we're going to do the same thing. Remember that that was 2 feet equals 1/2 inch in paper space. So I'm going to do that same thing, 2 feet, drawing a little construction line, and then I'm going to drag this down a little bit, and I'm going to go to Annotate tab, Dimension, and we're going to dimension these and bring it out to align with that line. Now some people are okay with the dimension numbers matching like the position. So see how this is reading horizontal and this is reading horizontal? Some people don't like it to be horizontal. They want it to stay aligned with the dimension. So if you need to rotate this text, all you need to do is grab the dimension, right click, go to Properties. Under Properties, find the heading called Text, and under Text, find where it says Text Rotation. With that dimension highlighted, go ahead and type 90 for a 90-degree rotation, and you'll see how it updates the text of your dimension. So that way you can have it running. Now if you want to, a little trick that I always did was grab that dimension, copy it from the top, and place it at the bottom, and then you can keep it going. Otherwise, if you try to dimension again, what it'll do is it'll keep that initial rotation, and you'll have to go back and do that extra step of rotating this number. So it's up to you as to how you want to do it. I just find that maybe copying the dimension and then adjusting it might go a little bit quicker than coming to properties and rotating that number. So I'm just going to do a couple more here. I'll just do this window. That's good enough for demonstration purposes. Awesome. So we got the dimension text. One little trick I want to show you just in case, if you have a dimension that's a little tight inside of there, if you want to have a leader line that helps you pull that number out and still associate to this dimension, grab the dimension that you're questioning, grab the right one, well, not both, just this one, there we go. Right click and go to properties, and then under properties find fit, and the last little area under fit is text movement. Make sure that you click on this little scroll bar and choose the middle option, which is move text and add leader. Once you do that, you can grab this little middle grip and you can pull it out, and you can see how you can get a little leader line to help you still associate this number with this dimension. But if the number doesn't fit inside like it normally does, that's the best way to do it. So you can either make it a straight line where it's doing something like that, or give it a little bit of a diagonal. Since I think it fits okay, I'm just going to go ahead and go back, but I just wanted to show you that little trick. Alright, so the next step is to do the mid dimension, and so I'm going to go ahead and go to Home tab, draw a line. I'm just going to find a random place, and we're going to go up 2 feet. And again, I'm going to place this line all the way across, and again, we're trying to keep it the same distance as we go, keeping it consistent. Mid dimensions don't get quite as detailed, but they kind of get like some more general. So I'm really looking at the building shape, and I see that there's this little bump out, and so that's what I'm wanting to dimension in the mid dimensions. So annotate dimension. I'm going to once again click and click, but this time I'm going to go up on the top and align it, and then I can get rid of these 2 lines because I've now established where those mid dimensions are going to live. So again, there's a break. There's not a break here, so what we have to do is grab that dimension, grab this grip, and bring it up so that we can see a break. Excellent. So again, these are still giving us some information, but it's kind of doing like long runs of walls, especially if there are bump outs. Now, if there wasn't a bump out, I probably wouldn't have mid dimensions on this building. I would just have the detailed and the overall. But since there are bump outs, we're just going to go ahead and place those. Now, some people like to have these repeat. Some people maybe get rid of it at the detail line and let the mid dimension live up here. Totally up to whoever's in charge. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and do this mid dimension and attach it here. And again, grab it, make sure that we've got some breathing room right there. Oop, I guess I forgot to do that on that mid dimension. There we go. Now it looks good. We've got some breathing room. Our dimensions are socially distancing from our building. So important these days. All right. Oh, haha. I almost forgot this side. Not that this is really going to be showing in my final printout, but consistency and good habits are always good. All right, so the next step is to do the same thing over here. So obviously, when we're looking at this building, there would be a mid here and here. There'd be 3 mid dimensions kind of happening. So because I'm not really focused on this area, I'm just going to do the same thing here. Find a spot, 2 feet, not diagonal line. Silly CAD. 2 feet. There we go. And I'm just going to kind of draw a little guideline. Annotate dimension. And I'm just going to do a mid dimension and align it like so. Get rid of my construction lines that were there to just help guide me. And there I've got my mid dimension. Now the overall dimension again is going to be placed 2 feet on top of both of those. So just find a spot, 2 feet, and I just kind of extend it over. The overall dimension is usually the entire object, so from end to end. And then you align it, and then you can get rid of these. Now what's interesting is when we go to paper space, you can see that I just need to readjust my area a little bit. I did end up going off of the title block, so I'll need to fix that. So I might actually need to change my viewport to be a little bit smaller. So let's try 3/16. There we go. And now I can get everything in that I was looking to get in. Now, because I changed it to 3/16, I might need to go back and double check and see, is this a 1/2 inch away? It probably isn't. It's probably smaller now. Oh gosh, I totally screwed that up, didn't I? That's okay. So 0.5. Yep, so there's where 1/2 inch should be. So just make sure that anytime that you make changes, that you have to go back and adjust things to make sure that you're meeting the parameters of your project manager or your instructor. So you might have to go back in and reconfigure where these dimensions are actually going to be located. To make this video a little bit shorter, I'm not going to do that, guys. But what I am going to do is, because we did make it 3/16, I'm going to grab all of these dimensions. And remember that our dimension style needs to match the viewport. So annotate, come here to dimension. It looks like maybe I grabbed something that's not a dimension. That's really funny. See. Oh, something there is not a dimension. Oh, there we go. Huh. I don't know what happened, that I grabbed something that wasn't a dimension because I wasn't able to access where it says 1/4. But anyways, now it is 3/16, so I'm going to come through here and look for 3/16. There it is, the very last one. Click on that and you'll see that it kind of updated the size of your text. It's actually a little bit bigger, but that's just to compensate for what happened in this the change of size in Paperspace. So now that 2 foot is looking a little snug. I'm going to come in here, right click, properties, go to fit, and on that particular one I'm going to make sure that I have a little leader line. Looks like I forgot to grab it, and then do fit. Oh my goodness, you guys, it's so crazy. Well, why aren't you behaving that way? It's supposed to. You are a naughty CAD program. And now you're not even moving that. Forget you. We're going to draw a new one. When in doubt, just draw a new one. Make sure that you have it on the 3/16 size. Alright, grabbing that one, going to fit, move. There we go, now it's behaving. CAD. So that way I'm keeping everything aligned, but I can also make it readable, which is extremely important. So you might need to change that with these two, but I'm not going to, just because I'm trying to save time. But that is how you do the exterior. The interior of the building is very similar. Again, there's no right way or wrong way, but just find out from your instructor how they want you to dimension your walls. So I'm going to make sure that I'm set to 3/16. Click dimension. I like to go from, like, so for instance, if I'm going to start here, notice how I started on the right side of the exterior wall. I'm going to go to the right side of the next wall. Now here I don't necessarily want an extension line, so I can keep it here. and then you start in the same place, right side to right side. Oops, I hit escape too fast. Right side. Hey, CAD. Right side to right side, and then place it, and we're good to go. That's looking beautiful. And once again, right side to right side, place it, and then just make sure that you're keeping things aligned correctly. Some people like to measure from the center of the wall, so if your instructor wants you to measure at the center of the wall, all you have to do is grab a line and kind of draw in a little line, and that way you can move these grips to actually be in the center, and then just make sure you go back and erase that little line. So that's how you can get to the center of the walls if you need to. But I'm just going to keep it back on the right side. That has to do with how contractors go in and actually measure out for the walls. A lot of times what they do is they start with the exterior wall because that's already built, and then they just want to mark one side of the wall, and then they keep marking the same side of the walls until they get to the end. So that's how you can do that. Same thing with the vertical aspect. Annotate, dimension. Here we go. The trick to this is to make sure that you don't have text being crossed by lines. So like in this instance, there is a little bit of a line going through my text. Just grab your dimension and you can actually end up moving that text. And remember, if they want it rotated, just go to text rotation and make sure it's set to 90. And there it is. So never have lines going through your dimension numbers. Those are the most important things about a dimension, is the number. So readability is super important. But in all reality, that's the basics to doing your dimensions. Your instructor can go over any extra details that they want to go over, or show you how they want the dimensions to look, if they want it to be on the side or if they're okay with it being horizontal. Totally up to whoever's in charge, but then again, just kind of going back over here and checking things out and making sure that everything is reading the way that you want it to. That's the basics of dimensions, you guys. Happy dimensioning to one and all! Yay!